Introduction: The invisible ceiling you never knew existed. Why do some people work incredibly hard, sacrificing their weekends, missing family milestones, and pushing their bodies to the brink of exhaustion, yet never seem to move forward financially? And why does it seem that for others, opportunities flow toward them with an almost magnetic ease, as if they are operating under a different set of universal rules? It is tempting to blame the economy, your industry, your upbringing, or simple bad luck. We often look at our bank statements and assume the numbers are a direct reflection of our effort. We tell ourselves that if we just push harder, work longer hours, or find one more clever hack, the financial wall in front of us will finally crumble. But what if the greatest obstacle to your abundance is not something you can see, touch, or calculate on a spreadsheet? What if the most significant barrier to your prosperity is entirely invisible? Imagine for a moment that you are a bird born inside a house. You spend your entire life flying from the floor to the ceiling, repeatedly hitting the hard plaster above you. Eventually, you stop flying high. You learn to skim the furniture and perch on the curtain rods, convinced that the world ends just a few inches above your head. Then, one day, someone opens the door to the outside. You are free to fly into the vast, open sky, but you do not leave. You remain in the room, flying at your self-imposed altitude, because you have spent so long believing the ceiling is the limit of your reality. This is the invisible ceiling of abundance. It is a psychological construct, a thermal layer of beliefs, habits, and emotional conditioning that keeps you pinned to a specific level of financial success, regardless of how much you sweat or struggle. Financial struggle is almost always psychological before it is practical. You can change your budget, switch your career, or invest in new ventures, but if the internal thermostat remains set to a temperature of limitation, your external reality will always find a way to return to that familiar setting. We often believe that money is a logical, objective tool governed by math. In reality, money is an emotional, subjective experience governed by your identity. Your subconscious mind is a powerful engine designed to keep you safe and consistent with the person you believe yourself to be. If your subconscious holds deep-seated beliefs that money is dangerous, that wealth is for other people, or that having too much makes you a bad person, your brain will act as a silent saboteur. It will prevent you from seeing opportunities, cause you to procrastinate on critical tasks, or drive you to spend your gains as quickly as they arrive to maintain the equilibrium of your comfort zone. You are likely carrying the echoes of childhood conversations about money, the inherited anxieties of your ancestors, and the cultural scripts you picked up in school or through social media. These are not merely thoughts, they are the architectural blueprints of your financial life. When you try to build a skyscraper of wealth on a foundation designed for a shed, the structure will inevitably crack under the weight. This book is not about chasing external formulas, and it is certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme. Those paths only lead to temporary gains that vanish because the internal vessel cannot hold them. This journey is about something far more profound. It is about removing the internal barriers that keep you small. It is about excavating the buried beliefs that have been silently dictating your choices and rewriting them with the intentionality of a master builder. You have the power to change your story. Your history does not have to be your destiny. By understanding the neuroscience of your habits, the psychology of your desires, and the philosophy of true wealth, you can raise your ceiling. You can move from a place of survival to a place of thriving. You can create a life where financial freedom is not an elusive destination, but the natural byproduct of who you have become. As we move forward, prepare to challenge everything you thought you knew about your relationship with money. You are about to step out of the room where you have been confined and into a sky that is far larger than you ever imagined. We are going to dismantle the old, limiting structures of your mind and replace them with a consciousness of abundance. It is time to stop hitting your head against the ceiling and start claiming the space that was always yours to occupy. Let us begin the work of transforming your inner world so that your outer world can finally catch up to your potential. Reflection questions. If you were to honestly identify the financial level you have been hovering at for the last few years, what is the specific number or feeling that defines your current ceiling? When you think about having significantly more money than you have now, what is the very first emotion that surfaces? Is it excitement, or is it a subtle sense of dread, guilt, or fear? What is one area of your life where you feel you are working twice as hard as others but getting half the results? How might a limiting belief be playing a role in that specific outcome? Practical action steps. Financial audit. Take a moment to write down your current income goal and compare it to the actual income you have generated over the past 12 months. Observe the gap without judging yourself. Simply notice the stability of that gap as a sign of your current set point. The ceiling visualization. Find a quiet space today. Close your eyes and imagine yourself expanding beyond your current financial circumstances. Notice where your mind tries to stop you or bring you back to safety. Write down the thoughts that surface during this practice. Identify your primary money word. Pick one word that represents your current relationship with money, for example, struggle, anxiety, cycle, growth, or fear. Use this word as your anchor throughout this book. Commit to stillness. Set a timer for 5 minutes each day this week to simply sit in silence. This begins the process of quietening the external noise so you can hear the internal scripts that have been running on autopilot. Language awareness. Pay attention to how you speak about money for the next 24 hours. Do you use phrases like, "I cannot afford," "money is hard," or, "it is not my turn"? Replace these with neutral observations until we begin the rewriting process. Chapter Summary. Financial struggle is often a result of internal psychological limitations rather than external lack of opportunity. The invisible ceiling is an internal thermostat that maintains your financial status quo regardless of your effort. Money is an emotional and identity-based experience, not just a logical or mathematical one. Your subconscious mind works to maintain consistency with who you believe you are, often sabotaging success to keep you within your safe comfort zone. Childhood conditioning, ancestral patterns, and cultural scripts create the blueprint for your financial reality. Lasting wealth requires changing your internal identity before you can achieve long-term external prosperity. This book focuses on the deep psychological work of clearing internal barriers. Chapter 1. The hidden scripts you inherited about money. You arrived into this world as a blank canvas, but you did not stay that way for long. Long before you understood the value of a coin or the function of a bank account, you were absorbing data. You were an emotional sponge, soaking up the atmosphere of your home, the anxieties of your parents, and the unspoken rules of your community. Every time you heard a conversation about bills, every time you witnessed an argument about costs, and every time you saw a parent sacrifice a dream for the sake of survival, a line of code was written into your subconscious mind. We like to think that our financial decisions are the result of conscious, rational thought. We believe we make choices based on logic and market conditions. However, the truth is that most of your adult financial behaviors are actually echoes of your childhood. You are running an operating system that was programmed decades ago, often by people who were themselves struggling under the weight of their own invisible ceilings. These hidden scripts operate in the background of your mind, influencing how much you earn, how you save, and whether you allow yourself to feel secure or constantly on edge. Consider the atmosphere of your upbringing. Perhaps money was treated as a source of tension, a constant point of conflict that made the air in the house heavy whenever the topic arose. In that environment, your brain learned to associate money with stress, danger, and volatility. Or perhaps you grew up in a household where money was rarely discussed, where it was treated as a secret that children should not be concerned with. In that scenario, your brain learns that money is something to be avoided or hidden, creating a lack of financial literacy that leaves you feeling exposed and vulnerable as an adult. These early experiences do not just form thoughts, they form neural pathways. When you witness your parents repeatedly choosing scarcity over growth, your brain identifies that pattern as the safest way to exist. It labels survival as the goal and prosperity as an unknown, potentially dangerous variable. As you move into adulthood, your brain works tirelessly to keep you within that familiar, safe, and limiting environment. When you start to earn more money, your internal script might trigger a sense of guilt, causing you to spend that money impulsively just to get back to the level of safety you knew as a child. Family loyalty is another powerful, often silent factor. We often develop a subconscious contract with our families. If your family history is rooted in struggle, or if your parents lived with the belief that wealth requires compromising one's values, you may find that achieving success makes you feel like an outsider. You might unconsciously hold yourself back because deep down, you fear that surpassing your family's financial achievements is a betrayal of the tribe. You choose to stay small so that you can remain connected to the people you love. This is not a matter of blame. Your parents and guardians were likely doing the best they could with the information and emotional resources they had. They were passing down what they knew, even if what they knew was how to survive rather than how to thrive. The problem is not the intention behind the programming, the problem is that you are still running that program in a world that requires a different set of skills and a different internal foundation. You are not doomed to repeat these patterns. Your brain is plastic, which means it is capable of rewiring itself. You can identify the scripts that were handed to you and determine which ones no longer serve the person you are becoming. This begins with the courage to observe your own reactions. When you receive a large payment, what is your first impulse? Is it relief, or is it an urge to get rid of it quickly? When you think about investing in yourself, do you feel an internal restriction, as if you are doing something forbidden? These reactions are the sound of the old script playing in your head. When you catch yourself reacting to money in a way that feels automatic and irrational, you are witnessing the ghost of your past. By identifying these moments, you gain the power to pause. You can stop the tape from playing and choose a new, more empowering thought. You can acknowledge the history of your family while simultaneously choosing to write a new chapter for your own life. This process is about reclamation. You are reclaiming your right to define what abundance means to you, independent of the fears and limitations you inherited. You are moving from a state of being a passive recipient of your family's story to an active creator of your own financial legacy. The transition is rarely instantaneous, but it is steady. Every time you consciously choose a behavior that reflects abundance rather than scarcity, you strengthen a new neural pathway. You are teaching your brain that it is safe to grow, safe to earn, and safe to build a life that looks nothing like the one you started with. The hidden scripts are only powerful as long as they remain in the shadows. Once you bring them into the light, examine them, and challenge their validity, they lose their grip on your future. You are not a victim of your past, but you are a product of your history until you decide to take the pen and write your own future. Reflection questions. What are 3 specific phrases or beliefs about money that you heard most frequently when you were a child? How do you feel today when you compare your financial success to that of your parents or siblings? Do you feel a subtle pressure to stay at their level to avoid emotional separation? Can you identify a time in your recent life where you sabotaged a financial opportunity because it felt too good or unfamiliar compared to your typical experience? Practical action steps. Create your money history. Write a brief narrative of your family's relationship with money. Include how they spoke about it, how they handled it, and the emotional energy they projected regarding wealth. Identify your inherited beliefs. Based on your history, make a list of the rules you seem to be following unconsciously. For example, money is hard to come by, or people with money are dishonest. Question the logic. Take each of those inherited beliefs and write a logical, adult rebuttal to them. Why is that belief no longer true or relevant in your life today? Practice conscious spending. For the next week, track every expense with total awareness. Before you make a purchase, ask yourself, am I buying this because I want it, or is this an impulsive act to maintain my comfort zone? Define your new script. Write down one empowering belief you choose to adopt today that directly replaces a limiting one you inherited. Repeat this new belief each morning for the next 7 days. Chapter Summary. We are born into families that provide us with a financial operating system consisting of inherited beliefs, anxieties, and rules about money. Most adult financial behaviors are subconscious responses to childhood conditioning rather than purely logical decisions. The brain naturally seeks consistency, meaning it will sabotage success if that success threatens your internal sense of what is normal or safe. Unconscious family loyalty can cause us to mirror the financial struggles of our parents to maintain a sense of belonging. You do not have to blame your parents to recognize that their financial scripts may be outdated or limiting for your current goals. Neuroplasticity allows you to rewire your brain, replacing inherited limitations with new, intentional financial habits. Bringing hidden scripts into your conscious awareness is the first and most vital. Chapter 2, Scarcity is Learned Not Born. There is a fundamental misunderstanding about how our brains prioritize information. We often assume that our focus is naturally drawn to opportunity and growth, but the biological reality is far more primitive. Your brain was not designed by evolution to make you rich, it was designed to keep you alive. In the harsh environments where our ancestors developed, the primary threat was not a lack of investment returns, but a lack of resources. Consequently, the human brain is hardwired to prioritize the negative. It is a survival mechanism known as the negativity bias, which functions like a hypervigilant alarm system constantly scanning the horizon for lack, danger, and loss. When you feel an overwhelming sense of scarcity, you are not failing at being enlightened. You are simply experiencing a biological reflex that has been active for millions of years. However, while this mechanism was perfect for avoiding predators on the savannah, it is disastrous for navigating the modern economy. In our world, the belief that there is not enough to go around is a learned narrative that your brain treats as an absolute truth. Scarcity is not a feature of the world, it is a lens through which you have been trained to view reality. Consider how this shows up in your daily life. When a new business opportunity arrives, does your first thought focus on the potential for expansion, or does it immediately fixate on the risk of losing what you already have? When you see others succeeding, do you feel inspired, or does a faint, sinking feeling of, "there goes another piece of the pie," take hold? This is the scarcity reflex in action. It creates a tunnel vision where you become so focused on protecting your current pile of resources that you become blind to the infinite ways that wealth can be created, circulated, and grown. The danger of this mindset is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that money is a finite resource that is constantly draining away, you will manage your finances from a place of fear. You will hoard when you should be investing. You will settle for lower-paying roles because you are terrified of the uncertainty of the alternative. You will view your competitors as enemies rather than potential collaborators. In every instance, your fear of lack creates the very conditions that keep you small. You are playing a game of defense in a world that rewards those who play offense. It is crucial to recognize that scarcity is a learned habit of perception. Just as you learn to ride a bike or read a book, you learn to scan your life for what is missing. You learn to measure your worth by what you lack rather than what you possess. To break this cycle, you must consciously train your brain to scan for abundance. This is not about positive thinking or blind optimism, it is about cognitive discipline. It is about looking at your life and actively identifying the resources, the skills, the connections, and the opportunities that are already present. When you shift your focus from what you lack to what you have, you begin to activate the creative centers of your brain. You move from the reptilian survival mode into the prefrontal cortex, where problem-solving, innovation, and strategic planning happen. You start to see that money is not a static object like a rock that can be stolen or lost. It is a dynamic flow of value. When you provide value, you participate in that flow. You realize that you are not competing for a limited supply of money, but rather you are contributing to a vast, interconnected economic ecosystem where wealth is created through innovation, service, and exchange. This transition requires you to become a student of your own attention. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "I cannot afford this," or "there is never enough time," you are reinforcing the old neural pathway of lack. Simply notice that thought, label it as a remnant of your survival programming, and then pivot. Ask yourself a more empowering question: how can I create the value needed to make this possible, or what resources do I have right now that I am currently underutilizing? Abundance is not a final destination you reach after you have a certain amount in the bank. It is a way of being. It is the decision to walk through the world with the assumption that resources are accessible and that your potential to create value is unlimited. When you operate from this internal frequency, your external world begins to shift. You stop behaving like a scavenger and start behaving like a creator. You stop protecting a dwindling supply and start building a growing engine. The world remains the same, but your capacity to interact with it changes entirely, and in that change, your ceiling begins to dissolve. Reflection questions. Where in your life are you currently operating from a place of fear, specifically because you are worried about running out of something, be it money, time, or energy? Think of a time when you achieved a goal. Did you focus on the progress you made, or did you immediately start worrying about how to maintain that success so you would not lose it? What is one area of your business or personal finances where you are playing defense instead of offense? What would it look like to shift your energy to growth? Practical action steps. The abundance inventory. Write a list of 10 assets you possess that have nothing to do with money. Include skills, relationships, health, character traits, and past experiences. Remind yourself that these are your true wealth foundations. Interrupt the scarcity loop. Every time you hear yourself use the word can't regarding a financial goal, replace it with how. Force your brain to switch from a state of dismissal to a state of problem solving. Study growth. For the next 3 days, read or watch something specifically focused on how wealth is created through value exchange rather than extraction. Feed your mind with examples of abundance. Practice generosity. Give something small away, time, advice, or a resource, without expecting anything in return. This action breaks the subconscious belief that giving leads to lack. Focus on value, not price. In your next few financial decisions, prioritize the long-term value or utility of the choice over the immediate cost. This trains your brain to value return over scarcity. Chapter summary. The human brain is biologically hardwired to prioritize fear, lack, and loss to ensure survival. Scarcity is a learned lens through which we view the world, not an objective reality of our circumstances. The negativity bias makes us hypervigilant for risks, which often leads to defensive financial behaviors that prevent growth. Fear of lack creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, limiting your ability to innovate and see opportunities. Abundance is a shift in focus from what I lack to what I have and how I can add value. Shifting to an abundance mindset moves you from the survival-based reptilian brain to the creative, strategic prefrontal cortex. You must practice the cognitive discipline of scan. Chapter 3, The Psychology of Deservingness. Why do some people experience a sudden windfall, a business deal, an inheritance, or an unexpected career break, only to find themselves back at their original financial baseline within a few short years? It is a phenomenon that puzzles observers, yet the answer lies deep within the architecture of the human psyche. We often assume that we want more wealth, but there is a profound difference between the conscious desire for abundance and the subconscious belief that we actually deserve to possess it. If your internal identity is not aligned with the level of success you are chasing, your brain will interpret that success as an anomaly, a foreign object that does not belong in your system, and it will work tirelessly to eject it. The concept of deservingness is one of the most silent yet powerful regulators of your financial reality. It is a measurement of how much success, comfort, and freedom you are willing to permit yourself to enjoy before an internal alarm goes off. If you grew up in a culture or a household that equated financial struggle with moral integrity, your subconscious may have developed a rigid, invisible tether between your goodness and your lack of wealth. You might have been taught that those who have too much are either lucky, corrupt, or fundamentally different from people like us. Consequently, to become wealthy is to risk losing your identity, your moral standing, or your connection to your community. This is the hidden crisis of self-worth. Many people walk around with a persistent, low-level hum of not enough. It is not about their bank account, it is about their fundamental assessment of their own value. They feel they must constantly prove their worth through struggle, sacrifice, and suffering. If things start to become easy or if money begins to flow without the usual level of intense, exhausting effort, they feel a sense of unease. They feel like a fraud. This imposter syndrome is a direct symptom of a low deservingness ceiling. You have conditioned yourself to believe that value must be earned through pain, and when the pain is absent, you doubt the validity of the reward. When your deservingness thermostat is set to low, you will unconsciously sabotage your progress to stay within your comfort zone. You might undercharge for your services, even when the market demands more. You might avoid networking with high-caliber individuals because you feel out of place in their presence. You might experience a recurring pattern of self-sabotage, such as missing critical deadlines, overspending during periods of growth, or failing to follow through on high-level opportunities. These are not character flaws, they are protective measures. Your brain is trying to rescue you from the danger of being someone who has more than what you have been programmed to believe you are worth. To dismantle this ceiling, you must begin the challenging work of decoupling your worth from your history and your struggles. Your value as a human being is innate, it is not a commodity that fluctuates based on your income. When you can internalize this, you no longer need to use financial struggle as a form of penance or a way to prove your loyalty to your roots. You can begin to see that wealth is not a reward for suffering, but a natural result of the value you contribute to the world. Abundance becomes a tool you steward, not a prize you must fight to justify. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward freedom. You must ask yourself, with brutal honesty, what you are afraid of losing if you were to reach a higher level of prosperity. Are you afraid of criticism? Are you afraid of being seen as different? Are you afraid that if you have more, you will be expected to give more, and you fear you do not have enough to share? These fears are simply shadows. They lose their substance the moment you turn the light of conscious awareness upon them. You are allowed to be successful. You are allowed to live with ease. Your desire for more is not a greedy whim, it is an expression of your human potential, and you are fully authorized to claim it. As you begin to increase your deservingness, you will notice that your decisions change. You will stop settling for crumbs and start demanding the seat at the table that your work deserves. You will set boundaries with people who thrive on your limitations, and you will align yourself with environments that mirror the growth you desire. You are moving from a state of seeking permission to a state of embodying ownership. You are realizing that the only gatekeeper to your abundance has always been the version of yourself that decided you were not enough. By healing this narrative, you are not just changing your finances, you are reclaiming your soul. Reflection questions. If you were to receive a significant, life-changing amount of money tomorrow, what is the specific fear or anxiety that arises in your mind regarding what that would change about you or your relationships? Do you find that you feel more at home or comfortable when things are difficult than when things are going smoothly and successfully? How might this be a sign of a low deservingness ceiling? In what areas of your life are you currently settling for less than what you know you are capable of, simply because you do not want to rock the boat or draw attention to yourself? Chapter Summary. Deservingness is an internal regulator that determines how much success and wealth you allow yourself to keep. If your internal identity is not aligned with your external success, your brain will sabotage your progress to return you to your normal state. Many people subconsciously link financial struggle to moral goodness, leading to a fear that wealth will compromise their values or identity. Low self-worth manifests as self-sabotage, such as undercharging for services or avoiding high-level opportunities, to prevent the feeling of being an imposter. Decoupling your innate worth from your financial performance is the key to breaking the cycle of using struggle as a form of penance. Wealth is a tool for stewardship and value creation, not a reward for suffering or a measure of your worth as a person. Raising your deservingness allows you to own your success, set higher boundaries. Chapter 4, The Family Loyalty Trap. We often move through life assuming our financial choices are entirely our own. We believe we are the architects of our own destiny, deciding how much to earn, where to live, and which risks to take. Yet, there is a powerful, invisible force that quietly shapes these decisions from the shadows, the gravitational pull of family loyalty. From the moment you are born, you are woven into the collective story of your lineage. You inherit not just your eye color or your temperament, but the emotional landscape of your ancestors. If your family history is rooted in a specific narrative about money, whether it is a narrative of hardship, sacrifice, or mistrust, you likely have a subconscious agreement to maintain that same narrative to ensure your place within the tribe. This is the family loyalty trap. It is the unconscious belief that if you were to achieve a level of prosperity that far exceeds what your parents or grandparents achieved, you would be somehow betraying them. It feels like a subtle, painful rupture. If you grow up watching your parents struggle to make ends meet, you may develop a deep, protective instinct to share in that struggle. Deep down, your brain associates financial success with emotional separation. It whispers that if you become too big, you will lose your connection to the people who raised you. To remain safe and loved, you keep yourself tethered to the same financial attitude as your family, ensuring that you remain one of them rather than an outsider who might be judged, resented, or abandoned. This loyalty is rarely articulated, it is felt in the gut. It shows up when you feel a surge of guilt after landing a promotion, or when you find yourself struggling to maintain your own boundaries when family members ask for money you cannot afford to give. It is the internal conflict between your desire for personal growth and your biological need to belong. When you attempt to rise, you might notice that the people closest to you unconsciously, or even overtly, push back. They may project their own fears onto you, warning you against taking risks or questioning your new priorities. Their resistance is not necessarily an attack on you, it is a defensive reaction to the fact that you are challenging the equilibrium of the entire family system. By changing your relationship with money, you are essentially threatening the map they have used to navigate their entire lives. The trap is effective because it uses your most powerful human drive, the need for connection. We would rather fail alongside our loved ones than succeed in isolation. However, this is a profound fallacy. Choosing to remain limited out of loyalty does not actually help your family. It only ensures that the pattern of limitation continues for another generation. You cannot lift anyone else up if you are locked in the same cage of scarcity. When you choose to break the cycle, you are not betraying your family, you are providing a new blueprint for them to follow. You are showing them that it is possible to transform, to heal, and to build a life of abundance without losing one's identity or heritage. True loyalty is not about repeating the mistakes of the past, it is about honoring the sacrifices of those who came before you by taking their efforts to the next level. Your ancestors likely wanted you to have a better life than they did. When you break your own invisible ceiling, you are fulfilling the silent, unstated hope of your lineage. You are clearing the path so that those who come after you do not have to bear the same burdens. This requires immense courage, as it often means standing alone for a season while you reshape your internal world. You must learn to tolerate the discomfort of being the first to deviate from the family script. You must be willing to accept that not everyone will understand your journey, and that is a price you must be willing to pay for your own freedom. As you detach from these unconscious loyalty pacts, your perspective on your family relationships will begin to shift. You move from a place of codependency to a place of empowered love. You can appreciate your parents for their sacrifices without feeling obligated to repeat their financial outcomes. You can offer support to your family from a place of abundance rather than from a place of shared anxiety. You stop playing the role of the mirror, reflecting back their limitations, and start playing the role of the pioneer, creating a new territory of prosperity. The invisible tether begins to dissolve, not because you have cut ties, but because you have outgrown the need for those particular chains. You realize that your true loyalty is to the truth of your own potential, and that by becoming your fullest self, you offer the greatest possible gift to everyone you love. Chapter Summary. Family loyalty is a powerful, often subconscious force that can tether you to the financial patterns of your ancestors. We often limit our success to avoid the feeling of being an outsider, or betraying our family lineage by exceeding their achievements. The brain may prioritize maintaining connection to the family tribe over personal financial growth, leading to self-sabotage. The family loyalty trap is a fallacy. Remaining stuck does not help your family but instead perpetuates the cycle of limitation. Breaking the cycle is an act of honoring your ancestors by taking their legacy further than they were able to go. You must be prepared to handle the temporary discomfort of being the first to deviate from established family scripts. Transforming your financial life allows you to shift from a role of codependency to one of empowered stewardship, providing a new model of. Chapter 5, Fear of Success and Fear of Visibility. We often spend our lives chasing success as if it were the ultimate remedy for our insecurities, believing that once we reach a certain level of prosperity, the pressure will finally dissipate. Yet, there is a paradox that catches many off guard: the closer we get to our true potential, the more the fear of success begins to surface. This is not a fear of having money, it is a fear of what success requires of us. It is the dread of being seen, of being known, and of the responsibilities that come with occupying a larger space in the world. When you operate in the shadows, your own insignificance protects you. When you rise, you step into the light, and for many, that exposure feels inherently dangerous. Visibility is a form of vulnerability. As you climb your invisible ceiling, you become a target for judgment, comparison, and projection. You worry about what others will think of your newfound confidence. You fear that if you stand out, you will be scrutinized, held to impossible standards, or accused of changing in ways that others find uncomfortable. This fear often manifests as a desire to stay under the radar, even while you consciously want to achieve more. You might find yourself doing the work to build a business or advance your career, only to retreat at the last moment when it becomes clear that people are actually paying attention to you. You are essentially hiding in plain sight, ensuring that you remain just successful enough to be safe, but not so successful that you are truly visible. This fear is rooted in our evolutionary past, where being noticed by the wrong people or standing out from the tribe could literally lead to exile or harm. Your nervous system still carries the imprint of that ancient threat. It perceives success not as an achievement, but as an invitation to conflict. When you start to gain traction, your brain sounds the alarm. It tells you that if you are seen as successful, you will lose your privacy, you will be burdened with the expectations of others, and you will eventually be found out for who you really are. This creates a powerful tension. You feel the pull of your own ambition, but you are anchored by the desire to remain invisible and protected from the weight of external opinion. The tragedy of this fear is that it forces you to perform your life at a fraction of your actual capacity. You curate your output to be palatable, agreeable, and non-threatening. You edit your voice, your vision, and your ambition to ensure you do not offend the sensibilities of those who prefer you to stay small. You begin to suffer from a lack of self-expression, which is the fastest way to kill the vitality required to build sustainable wealth. True abundance requires the courage to be seen in your full integrity. It requires you to step into the light, accept that not everyone will celebrate your rise, and move forward anyway. The people who are truly meant to be in your orbit will be inspired by your visibility, while those who are threatened by it were never going to support your growth in the first place. When you choose to release fear of visibility, you transform the way you interact with the world. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "Does this align with my vision?" You realize that your success is not an offense to others, it is a signal that growth is possible. By claiming your space, you give others permission to do the same. You stop apologizing for your ambition and start utilizing your platform to create value. This does not mean you have to seek fame or public validation. It means you are no longer willing to hide your light to manage the comfort levels of people who are not invested in your evolution. As you shed this fear, you will find that your financial life becomes an extension of your authentic self. You will stop performing for others and start building for your purpose. You will attract the right opportunities because you are finally showing up as the person you were meant to be. The invisible ceiling begins to crumble when you realize that you were never hiding from the world, you were hiding from your own power. Once you choose to step out of the shadows and embrace your visibility, you open the door to a level of abundance that is not just financial, but deeply, profoundly free. You are no longer trying to manage the external perception of your life, you are focused on the internal reality of your impact. Chapter Summary. Fear of success is often a fear of the vulnerability that comes with being seen and held accountable at a higher level. Visibility triggers an ancient survival response that views standing out from the crowd as a threat to safety and belonging. The desire for invisibility leads to self-sabotage, where we limit our success to avoid the scrutiny and expectations of others. Hiding your voice and vision to avoid judgment kills the creativity and energy necessary for sustainable wealth creation. True abundance requires the courage to be seen in your full integrity and the willingness to accept that not everyone will support your rise. Stepping out of the shadows allows you to focus on your purpose rather than managing the external perception of your growth. You transform your financial reality when you stop performing for others and start acting for. Chapter 6: How the Brain Protects Familiar Financial Patterns. The human brain is a master of efficiency. Every day, it processes an unfathomable amount of information, and to keep from overloading, it relies on a sophisticated system of habits and neural pathways. These pathways are like well-worn trails in a dense forest. The more you walk them, the deeper they become, and the easier it is to follow them without even thinking. When it comes to your finances, your brain has spent years carving out specific trails based on what it perceives to be your baseline. It knows exactly how much you earn, how you spend, how you worry, and how you save. This set of behaviors is your financial comfort zone, and your brain is programmed to protect it with fierce intensity. When you attempt to make a significant change, such as drastically increasing your income, shifting your investment strategy, or breaking a cycle of overspending. You are essentially trying to clear a new path through the wilderness. Initially, this feels like an uphill battle. Because the new path is unmapped, your brain struggles to make sense of it. It requires more cognitive effort, more focus, and more emotional energy. This is why change initially feels so uncomfortable, anxiety-inducing, and sometimes even physically exhausting. Your brain interprets this discomfort as a sign that you have drifted off course. It views the new, more prosperous behavior as a threat to your stability, and it will pull every lever it has to steer you back toward the familiar, even if the familiar is where you have been struggling all along. This is the neuroscience of homeostasis, the internal balance your body and mind work to maintain. If you have been programmed to believe that you are someone who lives paycheck to paycheck, your brain will subconsciously view a surplus of money as an imbalance. It will look for ways to restore your equilibrium, which might lead you to create unexpected expenses, take on unnecessary debt, or lose motivation just as you start to gain ground. These are not failures of character, they are automated responses from a system that is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Keep you consistent with who you have always been. The challenge is that your brain does not distinguish between a bad habit that causes stress and a good habit that creates growth. It only knows what is familiar and what is not. To overcome this, you must understand that the discomfort you feel during a period of growth is not a warning to stop, it is a sign that you are upgrading your operating system. Every time you consciously choose a new financial behavior, such as setting aside money when you would usually spend it, or taking an action that feels intimidatingly big, you are physically strengthening a new neural pathway. At first, this is difficult because the old pathway is still the dominant one. But neuroplasticity is on your side. With repetition, the new pathway becomes thicker, faster, and more accessible. Eventually, what once felt like a monumental effort becomes your new baseline, and your brain begins to view the once daunting task as the new, safe standard. The process of change requires you to be patient with your own biology. You must recognize that your brain will inevitably try to pull you back to the safety of the old patterns during moments of stress. When you catch yourself reverting, you must treat it as data, not as defeat. You are simply noticing that the old trail is still calling, and you are choosing to stay on the path you are currently building. By doing this consistently, you effectively force your brain to rewire itself. You are demonstrating to your own nervous system that the new level of success is not a transient state, but the new reality. You are teaching your brain that it is safe to expand, safe to thrive, and that you do not need the old limitations to survive. As you continue this practice, the resistance will begin to fade. The urge to sabotage will lose its urgency. You will find that you are no longer fighting your own mind, but rather utilizing it as a tool to cement your new identity. You will look back on the period where you struggled to change, and you will see it for what it was, a necessary period of construction. You were building the foundation of a new life, brick by neural brick. You are proving to yourself that your history does not dictate your future, and that with enough intentional practice, even the most deeply ingrained financial patterns can be overwritten. Chapter Summary. The brain uses well-worn neural pathways to automate behaviors, creating a financial comfort zone that it strives to protect. Homeostasis is the biological drive that attempts to pull you back to familiar, even if limiting, financial patterns when you try to change. Discomfort during growth is not a sign of failure but a clear indicator that your brain is attempting to maintain the status quo. Neuroplasticity allows you to physically build new neural pathways through consistent, intentional repetition of new behaviors. The brain does not naturally distinguish between good or bad habits, it only values what is familiar, making early growth feel like a threat. When you revert to old behaviors during stress, it is a biological response, not a moral failing. Treat these moments as data to guide your continued growth. With sustained practice, new behaviors eventually become your new baseline, allowing your brain to support your growth. Chapter 7, Rewriting Your Internal Money Story. You have been living inside a narrative that was written long before you had the capacity to hold a pen. Whether you realized it or not, you have been acting out the roles assigned to you by your upbringing, your environment, and the societal pressures that shaped your formative years. For most of us, this story is one of limitation, a tale of just enough, or perhaps a saga of constant struggle. The most profound realization you can have is that this story is not a historical fact, it is a creative interpretation. It is a set of mental constructs that you have continued to reinforce every single day through your inner dialogue, your decisions, and your reactions to the world. Rewriting your money story is not about lying to yourself or engaging in empty affirmations. It is about intentionally selecting the narrative that supports the person you are choosing to become. The brain is an engine that runs on the fuel of your beliefs. If you consistently feed it the story that you are a victim of financial circumstances, it will find evidence to support that position. If you feed it the story that you are a capable steward of resources, a master of your own destiny, and a creator of value, it will work just as hard to validate that reality. You are an author, narrator, and hero. The power to change the plot is not located in the economy or your bank account. It is located in your imagination. The rewriting process starts with deliberately using your internal narrative. You must begin to catch the old, limiting thoughts as they arise and replace them with new, evidence-based truths. When you think, "I have to work myself into the ground to get ahead," you must consciously pause and pivot to, "I am learning how to create value with efficiency and ease." This is not merely about changing your language, it is about changing your emotional experience. Beliefs are held in place by emotion, and to overwrite an old, deeply seated script, you must engage your imagination and your sense of possibility. You must visualize the outcome you desire with such clarity that it begins to feel like a memory of something that has already happened. This is the power of experiential practice. Your brain often struggles to distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a physical reality. When you consistently place yourself in the emotional state of having already reached your goal, you begin to alter your physiological and neurological response to your finances. You lose the frantic energy of desperation and gain the calm, grounded energy of ownership. You stop making decisions from a place of, "What if I lose everything?" and start making them from a place of, "How does this align with my vision of abundance?" Your internal story dictates your external posture, and your posture determines the opportunities you are capable of attracting. As you rewrite your story, you will likely encounter periods of dissonance. Your logical mind might protest, pointing to your current bank balance as evidence that the new story is a fantasy. This is normal. You are in a transition phase. Do not allow the temporary conditions of your life to override the intentional vision of your future. You are building a new identity, and every time you act in accordance with the new story, you add another layer of proof to your subconscious. You are essentially gaslighting your old limitations out of existence by refusing to acknowledge them as your ultimate reality. The beauty of this process is that it is self-reinforcing. As your internal story shifts, your actions become more aligned. As your actions align, you gain small wins. These wins provide the empirical evidence that your new story is accurate. The doubt begins to wane, and the momentum begins to build. You find that you are no longer forcing your way to success, you are flowing toward it. The invisible ceiling that once seemed so solid is revealed to be nothing more than a mental construct that held its shape only because you believed in it. Once you pull the thread of your old story, the entire structure begins to unravel, leaving you with a blank page and the freedom to write something entirely new. Chapter Summary. Your current financial reality is a narrative construct, not an immutable historical fact. You are the author of your future. Rewriting your story is about intentionally selecting beliefs that support your growth rather than repeating the scripts of your past. Your brain uses your beliefs as a filter, constantly scanning for evidence to validate the story you are feeding it. Beliefs are anchored by emotion, which is why visualizing and feeling your success is essential to overriding deep-seated scripts. Experiential practice, living as if your new reality is already true, aligns your nervous system with your desired level of abundance. Expect cognitive dissonance as your old logic clashes with your new vision. Do not let current conditions dictate the story you are writing. Small wins provide the evidence your brain needs to solidify your new story, creating a positive feedback. Chapter 8, The Emotional Frequency of Abundance. When we think of financial success, our minds almost immediately turn to tactical maneuvers. We think about interest rates, salary negotiations, asset allocation, and tax strategies. While these components are important, they are merely the machinery of wealth. The fuel that powers the machine is your emotional frequency. Money is essentially a medium of exchange that carries the energy of the people involved. It is an emotional currency. If your internal world is saturated with the frequencies of lack, anxiety, or resentment, you are essentially vibrating at a level that repels the very abundance you claim to seek. Abundance is not just a destination, it is an emotional state that precedes and attracts the physical reality of wealth. The frequency of abundance is composed of several key emotional states: gratitude, generosity, trust, and responsibility. These are not merely virtues. They are cognitive strategies that keep your mind open to possibility. Gratitude, for example, is the ultimate antidote to scarcity. It forces you to scan your reality for what is working, what is growing, and what is already available. When you operate from a place of gratitude, you are signaling to your brain that you are safe and that resources are accessible. This lowers your cortisol levels, quiets the survival response, and allows your prefrontal cortex to function at its highest capacity. You become a magnet for solutions because your mind is no longer fixated on threats. Generosity functions in a similar way. It is a psychological declaration of sufficiency. When you give, whether it is your money, your time, or your wisdom, you are telling your brain that you have enough to share. This breaks the subconscious cycle of hoarding that defines the scarcity mindset. Generosity also strengthens your connections with others, which is the cornerstone of sustainable success. In a world where all value is exchanged between people, the ability to give creates a sense of goodwill and influence that eventually circles back to you in unexpected and often multiplicative ways. You are not just giving away resources, you are participating in the flow of life. Trust is perhaps the most difficult, yet most essential, frequency to master. This involves trusting yourself to handle both the highs and the lows of the financial journey. It involves trusting that you can create value regardless of the economic climate. When you lack this internal trust, you become reactive. You chase trends, you succumb to the fear of missing out, and you make decisions based on what others are doing. When you possess internal trust, you become proactive. You build based on your own vision, you stay the course during volatility, and you are comfortable with the uncertainty that naturally accompanies significant growth. Trust turns your financial strategy into an expression of your character. Responsibility is the final pillar of this frequency. It is the conscious decision to stop blaming external forces, the market, your boss, the economy, or your past, for your financial results. To be responsible is to be responsible. It is the profound realization that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you are entirely responsible for the internal meaning you assign to those events and the subsequent actions you take. When you shift into a frequency of total responsibility, you stop waiting for a savior and start acting like a creator. You own your outcomes, and in that ownership, you find your power. As you begin to deliberately cultivate these emotional states, you will notice a shift in your decision-making. You will find that you are less influenced by the noise of the market and more influenced by the internal clarity of your purpose. You will start to make choices that are aligned with long-term stability rather than short-term relief. You will find that your presence feels different to others. You will become a person of calm, grounded energy who attracts high-level opportunities. You are no longer trying to force the river to move, you are stepping into the current and allowing the flow of value to carry you forward. The emotional frequency of abundance is the secret key to unlocking the invisible ceiling because it changes the very way you experience the world. Chapter Summary. Financial success is driven by your emotional frequency, which serves as the fuel for your technical financial strategies. Gratitude is a cognitive strategy that overrides the negativity bias, signaling to your brain that resources are accessible and safe. Generosity acts as a psychological declaration of sufficiency, breaking the subconscious compulsion to hoard that stems from scarcity. Internal trust allows you to remain proactive and vision-driven during market volatility, rather than reactive and fear-driven. Responsibility is the ultimate power. It is the realization that you have the agency to determine your response to any financial situation. Emotional alignment reduces the cognitive load of survival, allowing you to use your mental energy for creative, high-level problem solving. Cultivating these states shifts your presence, making you a more effective leader. Chapter 9, Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage. We often fall into the trap of thinking that self-sabotage is a sign of weakness or a lack of discipline. We beat ourselves up for procrastination, for overspending during a moment of stress, or for avoiding that crucial negotiation that could have doubled our income. Yet, viewing these behaviors as moral failings is a mistake that keeps us trapped. Self-sabotage is not a flaw, it is a defense mechanism. It is your subconscious mind, working with surgical precision, to protect you from entering a reality that it deems unsafe. When you reach the edge of your comfort zone, your internal programming kicks in to drag you back to the safety of what you know. The most common form of sabotage is avoiding discomfort. We often avoid the work that leads to growth because that work brings us into contact with our deepest fears, fears of failure, of judgment, or of inadequacy. For example, you might have a project that could significantly elevate your professional status, but you find yourself endlessly tweaking the details instead of launching. You tell yourself you are being a perfectionist, but in reality, you are hiding. You are afraid that if you launch, you will be exposed. By keeping the project in a state of perpetual refinement, you remain in a safe zone of potential, where you can imagine success without ever having to risk the reality of it. Another insidious form of sabotage is the subconscious destruction of gains. If you have been programmed to believe that you are a person who lives at a specific financial level, your brain will interpret any windfall as a dangerous anomaly. You might find yourself feeling a strange, phantom anxiety when you have too much money in your account. To resolve this tension, you might unconsciously find ways to lose it. A sudden, unnecessary major purchase, an investment made without due diligence, or an impulsive decision that creates a crisis. Your brain is trying to restore your baseline. It is performing a self-corrective maneuver to put you back into the financial reality that feels normal to your nervous system. To break this cycle, you must learn to recognize the specific patterns of your sabotage. When you catch yourself delaying a task, ask yourself what you are actually afraid of. Is it the task itself, or is it the possibility that the task will lead to a new level of success that you are not yet comfortable with? When you notice the urge to spend or to distract yourself, pause and identify the emotion that triggered it. Is it a fear of the spotlight? Is it a sense of guilt that you are doing better than your peers? Once you name the fear, it loses its power to drive your behavior from the shadows. You move from being a victim of your impulses to being an observer of your psychology. The goal is not to stop feeling fear, but to learn to function in spite of it. You are teaching your nervous system that you can handle the intensity of success. This is an exercise in emotional regulation. When the fear of growth arises, take a deep breath and stay present. Do not let the brain pull you back into the comfort of your old habits. Tell yourself, this discomfort is just my nervous system recalibrating to a higher level of success. By staying present and continuing to act in alignment with your vision, you are proving to your brain that it is safe to be successful. You are slowly but surely widening your window of tolerance for prosperity. Breaking the cycle also requires you to build guardrails around your success. If you know you are prone to impulsive spending, set up automated systems that move your wealth into long-term holdings where it is not immediately accessible. If you know you are prone to procrastination, build in micro-accountability measures that force you to take action before your mind has a chance to talk you out of it. By creating these external structures, you reduce the reliance on your own willpower and provide your subconscious with a new, more stable foundation. You are not just trying to change your habits, you are designing a life that makes it easier to stay on the path of growth, even when your internal alarm bells start ringing. Chapter Summary. Self-sabotage is a defensive behavior designed to keep you within the safe limits of your established comfort zone. Avoidance and perfectionism are often masks for the fear of being seen or failing at a new level of success. The subconscious mind may attempt to correct financial gains by creating crises or impulsive spending to return you to a familiar baseline. Recognizing the emotional triggers behind your sabotage is the first step toward reclaiming your agency. Success requires emotional regulation. You must learn to stay present and move forward even when your nervous system feels threatened by growth. Building external systems, such as automation and accountability, reduces the need for willpower and provides stable guardrails for your wealth. By proving to your subconscious that you can safely handle higher levels of success, you widen your window of tolerance. Chapter 10. Creating an identity that naturally attracts wealth. The most common mistake we make when seeking financial transformation is treating wealth as an external target to be chased rather than an internal state to be embodied. We look for shortcuts, formulas, and strategies, hoping that if we just find the right mechanism, the money will flow. But the external world is a mirror. It reflects who you are, not just what you do. If your identity remains rooted in the persona of someone who is struggling, searching, or barely keeping their head above water, your life will continue to produce outcomes that match that identity. To build lasting, sustainable abundance, you must undergo an identity shift. You must become the person who is the natural home for the wealth you desire. An identity is a collection of core beliefs about who you are, what you are capable of, and what you are entitled to in this world. It is the filter through which you process every decision, from how you spend your morning to how you negotiate a major business contract. If your identity is, "I am someone who survives," you will consistently find ways to survive. If your identity is, "I am someone who builds," you will find yourself constructing value even in the midst of chaos. The most successful people in any field do not just have successful actions, they have successful identities. They don't just do wealth. They are wealthy in their mindset, their standards, and their internal sense of self. Creating this new identity is not a process of pretending to be someone else. It is an act of excavation, uncovering the powerful version of yourself that has been buried under layers of conditioning and fear. It begins with defining the standards of your new identity. How does this version of you handle challenges? How does this person value their time? What are the boundaries they set with themselves and others? When you start to answer these questions, you are creating a roadmap for your behavior. You are no longer acting based on the impulses of your past, but on the principles of your future. Every decision you make becomes an opportunity to cast a vote for this new identity. This process is ingrained in your daily habits. You become what you repeatedly do. If you want to embody the identity of a wealth builder, you must cultivate the habits of one. This means moving away from the reactive, short-term mindset of the consumer and toward the intentional, long-term mindset of the owner. It means choosing quality over quantity, investing in your own growth over immediate gratification, and focusing on the creation of value over the extraction of profit. When you perform these actions consistently, they stop being chores and start being the evidence that supports your new identity. You begin to feel like a different person, and that feeling is the signal that the transformation is taking root. The true test of an identity shift occurs when you are faced with a choice that contradicts your new self. The old identity will whisper that it is too hard, that you aren't ready, or that you should just stay where it is comfortable. This is the moment where you must consciously stand your ground. You must ask yourself, what would the person I am becoming do in this situation? By anchoring your actions in this new identity, you strip the old scripts of their power. You are effectively outgrowing the old version of yourself, making it impossible to return to the limitations of the past. Your identity becomes the anchor that keeps you stable in the face of change. As your identity solidifies, your external reality will naturally start to align. Opportunities will appear that you would have previously been blind to. People will begin to treat you differently because you are carrying yourself with a different level of integrity and purpose. You will find that you no longer have to struggle to reach for success, you are simply stepping into the life that matches who you have become. You are building an internal architecture that can hold wealth, manage it, and grow it. You are no longer chasing abundance, you are becoming the source of it. This is the ultimate freedom, the realization that the prosperity you seek was always a matter of becoming the right person. Chapter Summary. Wealth is a reflection of your identity. To change your financial outcomes, you must first transform the core beliefs about who you are. An identity shift is not about faking success but about excavating your true potential and defining the standards you choose to live by. Your identity acts as a filter for every decision you make, turning your choices into consistent actions that reinforce your new self. You build your new identity by intentionally cultivating the habits of an owner, a creator, and a steward of value. The gap between your current self and your desired identity is bridged by daily, small actions that cast votes for the person you are becoming. When facing a choice, asking, "What would my new identity do?" helps you bypass old, limiting scripts and reinforces your new path. Lasting abundance is the natural byproduct of an internal state that is aligned with the reality. Chapter 11, Building Healthy Relationships with Money. Most people view their relationship with money as a one-way street. They chase it, they spend it, and they worry about it. This transactional perspective is exactly what keeps the invisible ceiling firmly in place. Money is not just a cold, inanimate object to be gathered, it is a dynamic force that reflects your internal state, your values, and your willingness to participate in the exchange of value. If you harbor shame, guilt, or fear toward money, you are essentially damaging the relationship that allows you to build prosperity. To raise your ceiling, you must move from a posture of manipulation or avoidance to a posture of stewardship and clear, conscious interaction. The first step in healing this relationship is addressing the emotional baggage you carry. Many of us were taught to believe that having money is either a sign of greed or a source of danger. We project our unresolved emotions onto our finances, leading to patterns of self-sabotage or excessive anxiety. When you view money as a source of stress, your brain will subconsciously look for ways to minimize your contact with it, leading to a neglect of your financial planning or an impulsive urge to get rid of money as soon as it arrives. You must consciously reframe money as a neutral tool, an amplifier of your intentions. It is not inherently good or bad. It is what you bring to it that defines its impact. A healthy relationship with money is built on the same foundations as any other healthy relationship: transparency, respect, and clear boundaries. Transparency means looking at your finances with total, brutal honesty. It means knowing exactly where you stand, what you owe, and what you own, without judgment. When you avoid looking at your accounts, you are essentially avoiding the reality of your life, which creates a vacuum that anxiety will rush to fill. Respect means treating money as a finite resource that requires care and wisdom. It involves making intentional decisions about where your capital goes, ensuring that your spending is aligned with your values rather than the pressures of comparison or the desire for temporary emotional relief. Boundaries are perhaps the most vital component. This involves setting clear rules for how you interact with your money, such as establishing what you will invest, what you will save, and how you will say no to opportunities or requests that drain your resources without adding value. Boundaries are not about being stingy, they are about being intentional. When you lack boundaries, you are constantly leaking your energy, which leaves you feeling depleted and resentful. By setting firm, compassionate limits, you preserve your financial health and ensure that your resources are being directed toward things that actually matter to your long-term vision. You also need to remove the element of shame. If you have made mistakes in the past, or if you feel you are behind where you should be, let go of the burden. Shame is a paralyzing emotion that prevents you from learning and adapting. It causes you to freeze instead of pivoting. Acknowledge your past decisions as lessons, not as evidence of your character. A healthy relationship with money allows for growth, iteration, and the occasional mistake. When you remove the shame, you become capable of looking at your finances with a calm, objective eye, which is the only way to make the decisions that lead to true improvement. Finally, recognize that your relationship with money is a reflection of your relationship with yourself. When you practice self-respect, you naturally make better choices for your financial future. When you value your own growth, you are willing to invest in your own development, regardless of the immediate cost. You stop viewing money as something you need to fix your life, and you start viewing it as a resource that supports the life you are actively building. You are the partner in this relationship, and the more you approach your finances with maturity, clarity, and intentionality, the more effectively they will serve your purpose. You are moving from a state of dependency to a state of mastery. Chapter Summary. Money is a dynamic tool for value exchange, not an inanimate object. Your emotional frequency toward it determines how effectively you can build wealth. Healing your relationship with money requires moving away from shame, fear, and avoidance toward a model of stewardship and conscious interaction. Treat your finances with the same transparency and respect you would give to any significant partnership in your life. Establishing clear boundaries is essential for preventing energy leaks and ensuring your resources are aligned with your long-term vision. Shame is a paralyzing force. You must let go of past mistakes to view your financial reality with the objectivity needed for growth. Your relationship with money is a direct reflection of your relationship with yourself. Self-respect leads to better financial decision-making. Transitioning from dependency to financial mastery means using money as a resource that supports your purpose rather. Chapter 12, Daily Habits that Raise Your Financial Ceiling. The invisible ceiling is rarely broken by a single, dramatic event. It is dismantled through the cumulative effect of small, consistent actions that signal to your subconscious that you are capable of operating at a higher level. We often wait for a big break to change our financial trajectory, but wealth is almost always the byproduct of boring, repetitive, and disciplined habits. When you integrate high-level practices into your daily life, you are not just managing your money, you are systematically raising your internal thermostat for success. You are normalizing the behavior of a prosperous person until your brain no longer perceives that level of success as a threat, but as a standard. One of the most powerful habits you can cultivate is the practice of intentional review. Most people operate their finances on autopilot, reacting to bills as they arrive and spending based on the remaining balance. To raise your ceiling, you must move into the role of the observant steward. This means setting aside a specific time each week or month to look at your financial data. You are not just checking numbers, you are checking your alignment. Ask yourself, does this expenditure support the version of me I am building, or is it a relic of the person I am leaving behind? This habit of review removes the emotional charge from your finances and replaces it with objective intelligence. It turns you from a victim of your cash flow into the director of your resources. Another essential habit is the practice of conscious accumulation. Many of us are trained to consume, we are taught to use our resources to acquire things that depreciate. A wealth builder, however, focuses on the habit of accumulation. This does not always mean massive, high-stakes investing. It means the small, habitual act of setting aside capital for growth before you satisfy your desire for consumption. Whether it is a small percentage of your income or a consistent contribution to a long-term project, habit is key. The act of saving and investing is a psychological reinforcement that you are prioritizing your future self. It builds the belief that you have the power to create a legacy, rather than just surviving the present. You should also integrate the habit of continuous learning. Your financial ceiling is directly linked to your knowledge and your ability to add value to the marketplace. The world rewards those who solve complex problems. By dedicating time each day to sharpening your skills, studying your industry, or learning about the dynamics of your craft, you are increasing your market value. This is the most reliable investment you can make. When you commit to being a lifelong student, you ensure that you are always expanding your capacity to earn and contribute. You become a person who is constantly evolving, which makes you resilient to market shifts and capable of seizing new, more significant opportunities. Furthermore, practice the habit of conscious boundary setting in your daily interactions. This extends beyond money, it applies to your time, your emotional energy, and your focus. A person who is building a life of abundance recognizes that their energy is their most precious resource. They are selective about the people they spend time with, the environments they immerse themselves in, and the challenges they choose to engage. By curating your daily experience to be one that aligns with your vision, you protect your focus. You prevent the dilution of your ambition. You ensure that you are spending your days on things that actually move the needle of your financial and personal growth. Finally, practice the habit of closing the day with reflection. Before you sleep, briefly acknowledge the progress you made, even if it feels small. What did you do today that reflected your new identity? How did you handle a challenge with more grace or intelligence than your old self would have? By acknowledging these wins, you are training your brain to scan for evidence of your own growth. You are reinforcing the new neural pathways and creating a positive feedback loop. These small moments of recognition, done daily, eventually stack into a massive transformation. You are building your new life, one day, one habit, and one conscious choice at a time. Chapter Summary. Raising your financial ceiling is achieved through consistent, small habits rather than waiting for dramatic breakthroughs. Intentional financial review turns you from a reactive consumer into an objective director of your resources. The habit of conscious accumulation signals to your subconscious that you are prioritizing your future and capable of building long-term value. Continuous learning increases your capacity to solve problems, which directly correlates to your ability to earn and succeed. Protecting your time and energy through conscious boundary setting ensures your focus remains on tasks that move the needle. Daily reflection on your progress reinforces your new identity and strengthens the neural pathways associated with your growth. By normalizing prosperous behaviors, you eventually reset your internal. Chapter 13, Living Beyond the Invisible Ceiling. Once you have begun to dismantle the internal barriers of your past, you will start to notice a profound shift in how the world interacts with you. When you were operating beneath your ceiling, your environment was a reflection of your limited expectations. You saw only the obstacles that confirmed your scarcity, and you felt the weight of the invisible limit at every turn. But as you rewrite your internal scripts, raise your deservingness, and cultivate an identity of abundance, that ceiling begins to fade. You are no longer living in the room you were born into, you are now navigating a wider, more expansive landscape. This is the stage of integration, where your inner transformation begins to manifest as tangible, external opportunity. Living beyond the ceiling means you are no longer making decisions from a place of survival. You have developed the capacity to tolerate the intensity of success, which allows you to see doors that were previously invisible to you. Where you once saw a dead end, you now see a pivot point. Where you once saw a competitor, you now see a potential partner. You become a person who attracts high-level ideas and high-quality people because you are finally vibrating at a frequency that matches your potential. This is not a matter of luck, it is a matter of neurological readiness. Your brain is finally calibrated to recognize the opportunities that align with your new, higher standard of living. This new way of living requires a higher degree of emotional resilience. As you step into larger arenas, the scale of your challenges will inevitably increase. You will face more significant decisions, manage more complex responsibilities, and experience the pressure that comes with having more at stake. Yet, because you have done the deep psychological work, you will approach these pressures with a different energy. You will not feel the urge to retreat or sabotage your progress when things get intense. Instead, you will recognize that these challenges are the natural artifacts of a life lived in expansion. You will view them as evidence that you are operating at the level you have always been capable of reaching. You will also find that your relationships begin to undergo a natural, sometimes difficult, evolution. As you continue to grow, you may outgrow certain social circles or dynamics that were based on your previous level of limitation. This is a normal part of the process. You are not discarding people, you are simply evolving into a space where your values and priorities have shifted. You will find yourself naturally drawn to individuals who are also building, creating, and taking responsibility for their own lives. These connections will not be based on shared struggle or the comfort of the status quo, but on a shared commitment to growth, integrity, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. You are building a new tribe, one that supports and accelerates your ongoing expansion. Living beyond the ceiling also means you are no longer seeking validation from your bank account to tell you who you are. You have arrived at a place of internal security where your self-worth is no longer tethered to your net worth. Paradoxically, this detachment is what makes you even more effective. Because you are not desperate for financial approval, you make clearer, more courageous choices. You are willing to say no to good opportunities to wait for great ones. You are willing to take the calculated risks that others avoid because you have the internal trust to handle the outcome, whatever it may be. You are operating from a place of abundance, and that is where the true power of your life is realized. As you sustain this state, you will look back on the person who believed they were trapped by a ceiling and recognize them as a version of yourself that was simply waiting for permission to be free. The freedom you feel is not just about the money. It is about the autonomy of your mind and the alignment of your life with your deepest truths. You have reclaimed your power to create. You have proven that the barriers were never absolute, but merely shadows that retreated once you decided to stand in your own light. This is the permanent transition. You have moved from a life of contraction to a life of conscious expansion, and there is no going back. Chapter Summary. Living beyond the ceiling is an integration phase where your internal transformation begins to manifest as clear, external opportunities. Your improved psychological calibration allows you to perceive and seize opportunities that were previously invisible due to the scarcity filter. Increased success brings increased scale, requiring higher emotional resilience and the ability to maintain clarity under pressure. Your relationships will naturally evolve as you grow, leading you toward connections based on shared values and mutual expansion. Detaching your self-worth from your financial performance empowers you to make bolder, more courageous choices. The true power of this life stage is the autonomy to create and the realization that your potential is entirely in your own hands. You have successfully transitioned from a state of contraction to a permanent state of conscious, intentional expansion. Chapter 15, There Never Was a Ceiling. As you reach the end of this journey, take a moment to look back at the person you were when you first opened these pages. You may have started this book feeling that your financial progress was stalled by external forces, by the economy, by your career path, or by a simple lack of opportunity. You may have felt that you were pushing against a hard, unyielding barrier that prevented you from achieving the level of success you desired. But as we have explored together, the most profound realization you can have is that the barrier was never external. The ceiling you were hitting your head against was not a physical limit imposed by the world, it was a psychological construct maintained by your own internal blueprints. There never was a ceiling. There were only thoughts, beliefs, and emotional habits that you mistook for absolute reality. This realization is the ultimate liberation. If the barrier was external, you would be forever at the mercy of luck, circumstances, and the actions of others. But because the barrier was internal, it means you hold the keys to your own expansion. You have the power to redefine your reality at any moment by choosing a new story, cultivating a new identity, and practicing the emotional frequency of abundance. You are not a victim of your past, and you are no longer limited by the inherited scripts of your lineage. You have successfully updated your operating system to align with the potential that was always yours to claim. Throughout these chapters, you have learned that true wealth is not just about the numbers in your bank account, it is about the quality of your internal state and the clarity of your purpose. You have learned that self-sabotage is a defense mechanism you can outgrow, that visibility is a form of power, and that your emotional state is the fuel for your financial machine. You have walked the path from survival to stewardship, from reaction to creation, and from contraction to expansion. The work you have done is not a temporary fix, it is a fundamental reconfiguration of how you interact with the world. As you move forward, do not expect the path to be without its challenges. Life will always present obstacles. The difference is that you now possess the internal resources to face them with confidence. You are no longer looking for a way to escape your life. You are actively building a life that reflects your fullest potential. You have established a new baseline, a higher set point for your existence, and your brain will now work to keep you consistent with this new identity. You have mastered the art of becoming, and because of this, your external prosperity is now an inevitability rather than a desperate pursuit. Remember that this is not the end of your journey, but a new beginning. The freedom you have unlocked is dynamic and alive. It requires your continued attention, your intentionality, and your commitment to your own growth. Continue to scan for opportunities, continue to practice the emotional frequency of abundance, and continue to teach those around you through your actions. You are now the architect of your own legacy, and the space you occupy in the world is limited only by the size of your vision. You are not the same person who began this book. You have dismantled the old structures, and in their place, you have built a foundation of rock, capable of supporting a lifetime of purpose, impact, and freedom. The ceiling you once perceived has dissolved into the infinite expanse of your own potential. Go forward now and claim the life that was waiting for you all along. The world does not need you to stay small, it needs you to be the full, vibrant, prosperous version of yourself that you were born to be. The story is yours to write, the wealth is yours to steward, and the sky is, quite simply, the only place left to go. Chapter Summary. The invisible ceiling was never a physical limitation but a psychological construct that you had the power to dismantle all along. By internalizing this truth, you shift from being a victim of external circumstances to the conscious creator of your own financial reality. True wealth is a combination of your internal state, your identity, and your commitment to stewardship and purpose. You have reconfigured your operating system to support your growth, meaning your external prosperity will now naturally follow your internal transformation. Resilience in the face of future challenges is now your default, as you understand that growth is the natural result of staying present and intentional. This transition is permanent. You have established a new identity and a higher baseline that will serve as the foundation for your lifelong success. Your potential is truly limitless, and you now possess the internal toolkit to continue expanding, creating, and thriving for as long